everyone, it's Aislinn here. Welcome back to my channel if you are returning, and welcome if you are new. I'm doing weekly updates generally, but I did want to come in with this hopefully quick review on The Last Graduate. And this is my first DNF of the year, which is why I kind of wanted to come into this. So just to give some background, this is book 2 in the Scholomance series. I believe I pronounced it wrong in my last video, actually. The first one being Deadly Education. Now, I really enjoyed Deadly Education. Naomi Novak's writing style, I'm not a huge fan of, because she is very much a story happens off the page and then you're told about it after the fact, which in the first book she balanced it really well with with stuff happening in real time, and then stuff happened in the past that she's telling you about. And basically what the series is about is murder school. It's a bunch of magic kids that get chosen by the school. The school is a sentient being. It doesn't talk, but it does. It is a magical entity, and it brings all these kids in, and their whole goal is to survive for 4 years. I think it is. It's not really super clear, but I do believe it's 4 years, and basically survival of the fittest, the best of the best, the strongest of the strongest, those with certain family connections or culture connections, called enclaves. The story itself is really confusing, okay? So I'm trying to remember the first book that I read over a year ago. Just to give you some background of what I'm going to talk about here in the second book. Spoilers also for this, so feel free to completely skip this video if you don't want spoilers for this. But I'm going to try and keep it as low-key as I like, but I am talking about a second book, and I am going to be talking about why I DNF'd it, and that can be considered spoilery. So, anyway, that's kind of the first book, and you're introduced to Elle. She's the main female lead. You're introduced to Orion, the main male lead. He's like an enclave kid, and she's a bit of an outcast. Enclave kids are like this world's version of purebloods. If this was Harry Potter, just because they're both magic school settings, that's why I'm referencing it. It's nothing like Harry Potter, but except that it's magic school setting. And she's like descendant of a dark sorceress, so she's, kind of on the outs of the other students, which is really hard to survive because this school, because of how dangerous it is with the demons and monsters and all that run around in this school that you have to try and survive with, plus the tasks that it sets for you, they're very much more group-oriented. And if you're not part of a group and you don't have those protections, it makes it very hard to survive. So she is a very, very kind of hardened but incredibly powerful, sort of badass character, which I really enjoyed in the first book. And the main male lead, Orion, he was impulsive, but he, was not a moron. He's actually kind of a sweet guy, like really sweet, which in murder school, it was a nice play on, the light and dark. So that was the first book. Not going to get into spoilers. It does end on a cliffhanger. That is the warning I am giving you. And the only reason I went into book 2. So after reading book 1 and how it ended, I was like, oh, I have got to have book 2. So book 2 came out, my library got it, I snapped that shit up as soon as I could. First, I want to say probably 30 or 40% of the book, really good. It follows more the vein of Deadly Education. And then, I don't know if I missed something. I tried to go back in my audiobook and re-listen. I don't think I did. But then it was suddenly like we had a completely different book. Not theme-wise, but like the characters' personalities changed just like that. There was no build-up, no development. This come out of nowhere. The school went from being kind of this sentient but murderous, very coldly calculated entity to flat up asshole. Like, just like, no rhyme or reason. And that was one of the things intriguing in book 1, is the school did things, but it always had a reason. It needed a reason. And that was made very clear. So, like, if this happened, the school would have to respond this way. And it was all about the characters, figuring out how the school would respond to things. And that's how they would survive. And that was, in the first part of this book, that was really interesting. And then I'm not really sure. Suddenly when they started training for the graduation ceremony, and there's, a little bit of political maneuvering with the enclaves and things like that are happening, like, off screen, which I'm not quite sure how they're getting their news. I mean, it mentions that the younger kids are coming in every year. They bring news of the outside world, because once they go to this school, they're like locked up for like 4 years, and there's no media or anything, so they can't talk to their families. They can't talk to, like, other people of their communities and all that. So, but then I kind of question how, like, some of this news, again, the whole kind of world building outside of the school is very convoluted. And I knew that going into the first book, because I'd read reviews. And it doesn't get any better in the second one. So I should just stop asking questions, is what I should do. So I went, you know what? Don't ask questions. Just keep trucking along. Keep going. And then, like I said, the character personalities, particularly for Orion and Elle, it started to change to the extreme, where now they are becoming like caricatures of characters. Example, Elle was always kind of this badass bitch, but she was never heartless and cruel, and she certainly was not whiny. And then about this time she started of last graduation, she kind of starts to turn into this entitled, arrogant, look at me, I'm so perfect, preppy bitch girl, on top of being a whiny little shit. And, okay, that was like, you know what, you were a very severely neglected kid, now you're suddenly getting all this attention. I could kind of go with it, but I was starting to leave a bad taste in my mouth. Orion, who I liked in the other book, because like I said, he was very smart, very kind. Now he is, by about 40-some% of this book, he has rabbit hole nosedived into the very definition of big dumb jock. It was like big dumb jock trope, which is a trope I fucking hate, times like blown up. It's just, I can't even explain it. It's just so rage inducing, because you took a, for once, decently written male character and you turned him into the very type of trope that I think he was initially written to avoid, which I don't quite understand how that happened. And then, and I noped out at about 56%, so I gave this book a really good chance. And like I said, I stopped enjoying it about 40-ish%, but I kept going, because I was like, you know what, this could just be second book syndrome, could just be some shit going on, maybe this will all wrap up, in a decent way. But then it just started to get worse and worse, and then, because Orion's personality had changed to this big dumb jock, this was like it gave Elle, who is now this entitled preppy whiny bitch, permission to patronize and emotionally abuse him. That's the point when I said, fuck it, I'm out. I mean, we're told these characters are in a relationship. We're never shown it, but we are told it. There's a few kind of cute little scenes where they're hugging and you know, they kiss or whatever, but we're not really shown them. They don't act like they're in a relationship. Now, I don't know if there's a reason behind this writing. Maybe it has a plot point where, you know, maybe the whole point is Elle's supposed to be that way, so Ryan tells her to go fuck herself. Orion, sorry, tells her to go fuck herself. I don't know. If the way I looked at it is, if Elle was a main male lead in a book doing this exact same shit, this book would be getting completely shredded. Like, this book would be annihilated online and in reviews. And I'm trying to think of how to put this on camera and how to word this. So I don't mind dark stories. I don't mind violence. Even abuse to a point. You know, if the story is all about that abused victim, you know, maybe learning their own power, you know, getting some empowerment to get either out of that situation or change that situation. Or, you know, if they're a character that's like, you know, a slave or something and has no choice but to put up with the abuse, but the abuse is very blatantly, this is abusive, this is wrong. This book does not do that. It just happens, and there's nobody calling Elle out on it. Ryan's not calling her out on it. She's not calling herself out on it. To her, she's completely justified to talk to him that way. And just, you know, and he's like not even trying to stand up for himself. So, like I said, I don't know if there's some kind of plot point that's going to be coming up later with that. Maybe that is part of character development. Maybe, you know, Orion is going to be that abuse victim that becomes empowered to get out of that situation. I don't know. Frankly, I don't fucking care. I listened to 16% of this book of Elle being an abusive shit toward her so-called boyfriend and being an entitled, whiny, arrogant little bitch that I was so done. And if she'd been written that way from the very beginning, and I mean, I read Deadly Education over a year ago, so maybe she was like that, and I just didn't clue in, and because now of certain life circumstances, I am a little more aware of those types of abuse, that it just sitting wrong with me now, or maybe it didn't back then, but that's not how I recall it. So I'm judging it on how I recall it, and I don't recall her. Yes, she was hard. Yes, she was a badass. Yes, she was a bit bitchy, you know, but she was never cruel, as I mentioned before. And then in this point, she is now cruel. And maybe there's, like I said, I don't know what the ultimate plan for these characters are. The little bit I read online says this book ends in another cliffhanger. I guess the third book's going to wrap up the story. So maybe she's turning into the dark sorceress she was always trying to avoid to be, and this is part of that transition. Maybe, you know, like, I don't know. There could be justified reasons. So I don't want to rip into it too badly or just tell people this is a piece of shit book. But for me, I'm done. I'm done with the series. I'm done with that book. I'm trying to be fair, but I'm also really, really triggered right now. And that's why I wanted to film this review right away, because I just wanted to do like live term reactions. And I think I've ranted enough on this book. I think I've trashed it enough. If you want to read it, go ahead. Just be aware, if you are sensitive to patronizing and emotional abuse, you are not going to like a good portion of this book. And it is nothing like the first one after about the first 30 to 40%. So that's all I really have to say on it. Yeah, that's well, that's more of a rant than a review, but that is what it is, and I'm gonna go choose something else now, something far more entertaining. Maybe go back to one of my sarcastic characters, I don't know. But anyway, that's it, y'all, and I'll see you guys in the weekly wrap up, where I will talk a bit more about the other things that I am reading this week. Bye!